Curtain calls at midnight, truth at checkout. My name is Julian, and I measure nights by applause I didn't earn. I'm a front-of-house manager at the Rialto, a theater that sells the idea of forgiveness one ticket at a time. On paper, I schedule ushers, settle house counts, talk down donors, and talk up safety. In practice, I move people through their own expectations without letting them bump into the furniture. I carry a flashlight that glows with authority and new batteries, a ring of keys that knows which doors like flattery, and a notebook where I practice apologies. I live with Ben. He runs a tiny espresso bar under the J line, the kind with 3 stools and a milk steamer that sings like a train. He comes home with coffee oils in his hair and sentences that start with "what if" and end in a laugh we built together. We have a rule written in blue Sharpie on an index card stuck to the fridge: say it by noon. We decided it last winter after learning what late-night clarity actually means. Rehearsal for bigger lies. Noon is graceless. That's why it works. The Tuesday when the seats filled themselves and I didn't, the Rialto hummed like an organ. Our current show is a little miracle about a woman who lies convincingly to keep her house from falling down. People lean forward when she sings and laugh at the exact second you tell them to. At 7:58, I got a text from the joint email Ben and I use for deliveries. Thank you for your stay, the Marlborough Hotel. Time, 12:093:02. Points, 200 added. I swallowed the sentence, my mouth began to build, and told the ushers to open both sets of doors. I didn't call. Our second rule covers everything not yet a disaster, 2 loops around the block before nomming it. My block is the mezzanine corridor where the posters from 50 years ago pretend to have learned something. I walked it twice. The candy case sighed, the water fountain burped, and the building recited the line it offers when it's trying to be kind. You already know. He came in at intermission like a complication wearing a suit. I knew his face from the lobby, from the coat check, from donors' dinners I set tables for and then avoided sitting at. His name is Rowan Cass. He produces philanthropy and the occasional opera. He has the mouth of a man who can say no as a favor. He said mine like he'd been practicing. Julian. Rowan, I said, because we can all read a playbill. He followed me to the sidebar where the line cannot overhear you unless you want it to. You look like someone who made something work, he said. Come have a drink after at the Marlborough. I'm in the corner, as if corner were a language we both spoke. I have a boyfriend, I said like a rehearsal. I have a hotel, he said like a kindness. We could treat both with the respect they deserve. He was waiting at the stage door after the curtain call, hands in his pockets like he was hiding receipts. I walked past him because discipline is muscle memory, and then turned back because I am not only made of muscle. The Marlborough's elevators are mirrors that can't keep secrets. He stood too close in the ride-up, and I let him because sometimes the fastest way to the truth is the body. The room smelled like citrus and towels pretending to be absolution. We talked about the show for 6 minutes like good citizens, and then the conversation moved to the place where grammar becomes suggestion. He touched the back of my neck as if he knew I had stored a headache there. I put my mouth to the place between his shoulder and his throat where men keep their better nouns and said his name like a question I wanted to grade. He pushed me gently into the wall and asked, "Here," without punctuation. I said, "Yes," with my hands under his jacket. I learned the map of a man who memorizes seating charts and makes them a hobby. He learned my habit of leaving one sock on because theater people fear fully naked rooms. After he lay on the bed with his arms behind his head and said, "You'll forgive him," as if we were talking about economics. "I'll speak at noon," I said. He smiled like the first lie and handed me water because glassware is panache you can drink. Ben was asleep when I got home, face down and gentle like the parts of morning that haven't decided. I watched his shoulder rise and fall and knew how retail makes you tender. In the morning he made espresso because love is potable, and I told him about tips and receipts and a donor who tried to tip me with a compliment. I did not say the word hotel. He kissed me and tapped the index card and said, "Noon," and I made my hands wash dishes because they didn't know what else to do. The theater needed me to be humane. A woman in row F wanted her laugh refunded because a man in row E didn't know what to do with his hands. I moved a couple who kissed loudly to the aisle seat where freedom is closer to a door. The lighting console forgot a cue and remembered it after a breath that felt like theology. My phone burned in my pocket like an uncast understudy. At 11:59, I stood in our kitchen with my mouth full of a sentence. At noon, I told Ben I'd slept with someone. I said it in the kind of voice that empties furniture out of rooms. He closed his eyes and opened them again and said, "Do you love him?" As if a paramedic had trained him. I said, "I love the version of me he doesn't know yet." He nodded, and it sounded like a staircase admitting you right now is not the time to be precious. "Then here's what the rule needs to cost," he said. "No rooms we can't name in this kitchen, and if we break something, we do it where the other person can see the pieces." I texted Rowan we were done. He responded with 3 sentences that thought they were opera. I deleted the number because muscle memory can be edited. The city is petty, which is to say it's honest. Rowan came to a donor dinner 2 nights later and I had to put him at table 3 because table 1 was a war I couldn't afford and table 2 was a marriage I owed better. He watched me manage the room with a half smile like a director who wishes he were on stage. He left a folded note on the bar that smelled like oranges and said, "You can call when you miss being precise." And I didn't. Ben did not forgive me all at once. We practiced. We kissed like volunteers. We put our hands on each other the way stage managers set props. We left the lamp on because secrets don't deserve blackouts anymore. He pressed my wrists into the mattress with careful pressure and said, "Here." I said, "Now," because sometimes the only honest time signature is immediate. We were exact instead of careful. We spoke into skin like it could file a report. A week later, the gossip vertical The City Pretends Not to Read published a photo of Rowan outside my stage door. It was a sliver of a shoulder and a laugh I almost recognized. The caption said, "Arts and Crafts," and the comments tried to sell me questions I'd already answered. The board chair sent me an email with a subject line that read discretion and a body that read optics. I wrote back, "Understood," and took the afternoon to hammer a shelf into the break room because wood doesn't need PR. Then the intrigue arrived in better clothes. The Marlboro called to say they'd found a ring in a room I'd checked out of. It wasn't mine. It was Rowan's. He'd filed the loss because men like that never intend to lose anything that belongs to them. The manager asked if I could contact any guests I might have accompanied. I said, accurately, no, and hung up. 2 hours later, a reporter with a voice I used to admire called to say she'd received a tip that I'd received a ring, and could I comment on the way arts funding prefers to conduct its affairs. I took the call like a grown-up and said, "No comment." Then I went to the Marlboro and asked to see the ring because curiosity is a skill and I like to practice. It was a platinum band with a small inscription inside, C+R, the plus more accurate than any vowel. I felt like I'd been cast in a play that had never seen me rehearse. I handed it back to the desk clerk and walked out with the kind of professionalism that makes you look like you aren't running a fever. At noon, I told Ben everything, not just the hotel but the ring and the reporter and the specific way the lobby carpet had learned to carry men. He listened. He said, "We should leave this story alone before it puts on better makeup." I said, "You're the kindest man in a city that sells sincerity by the ounce." and he said, "I know how to do my job," and I loved him like a light cues a scene into belief. Rowan tried once more. He sent a text from a new number that said, "The ring wasn't mine." I sent back a period because stage managers know the value of stopping. He replied, "You'll be bored," and I wrote, "Then I'll deserve something," and blocked him again. Momentum isn't morality, but it helps. The theater kept asking me to be decent. I watched a teenager in row B decide. He loved the tenor in a way he wouldn't be able to say until he moved to another neighborhood. I moved a pair of husbands from rear balcony to center mezz because their hands were already holding each other's history. I talked a donor out of treating the aisle like a runway and a director out of treating the bar like a confession booth. I refilled the candy case and the apology jar, and I meant both. If you need the erotics to prove their ticket. Yes, it was a wall and a yes and a man who knew when to breathe. Yes, we left the lamp on because daylight is part of the bargain now. Yes, we were rough where it made sense and precise where it mattered. If you need the intrigue dressed and pressed, it was a suit that smelled like oranges and strategy, a ring with someone else's initials, a photograph that didn't catch the right thing, a kitchen where two men practiced noon like a profession. The last show of the month landed like a letter you've been avoiding and then finally read. I stood at the back of the house and watched people cry for a lie I sold them honestly. The curtain call came, and I counted the bows because counting is how I know I still own it. After, I went home, and Ben and I sat at the table and drank something that pretended to be better than water. We didn't say we were okay. We said we would check again at noon tomorrow. It felt like a promise we could both wear. Outside, the city lined its switches without complaint. Somewhere a hotel practiced absences with crisp corners. The theater exhaled the way rooms do when applause has left them and let the dust settle in a flattering light. For a few hours at a time, I know what door to open. For a few hours at a time, noon is enough.